Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Arcana Force Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile. We got some new Arcana Force support back from the Maze of Millennia booster set, and we also had some reprints from, I would say, one of the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duel sets as well for reprinting a bunch of the Arcana Force cards, making it easier to, make an Arcana Force deck as well. So I figured an update was due, just with all the, recently reprinted support, the new support to search out cards like Light Barrier, and it's overall a pretty fun fan favorite deck as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. For our new Arcana Force monster, we're running 3 copies of Arcana Force 25, The Fiend. I said 25, I think it actually might be 15, The Fiend, now that I'm re-looking at the Roman numerals now. So many of my friends just, called it 25, and I was like, okay. And then I'm reading the card right now, and I'm like, nope, that is definitely not 25. That is 15. But we're running 3 copies of this card. You can discard this card to add 1 Light Barrier from your deck or graveyard to your hand. If this card is summoned, toss a coin, and this card gains the appropriate effect. If its head, which is when an attack is declared involving this card, you can target 1 monster on the field, destroy it, and then inflict 500 damage to its controller. And if it's tails, if an attack was declared involving this card, destroy all monsters on the field. So it has some pretty good effects. Normally, one of the Arcana Force effects has a big repercussion to the person who summoned the card, but with the Fiend, you're really getting, 2 different effects that can either, destroy all cards on the field, or destroy a monster and then have this card when it's attacking. But the main play with this card is that you want to use it to be able to search out your field spell, which is Light Barrier, to have this card either be recycled from your graveyard or searched from your deck to your hand. Our bigger boss monster in the deck is Arcana Force 21, The World. With this card, if it's summoned, toss a coin. Heads, once per turn during your end phase, you can send 2 monsters you control to the graveyard, skip your opponent's next turn, or tails, once per turn during your opponent's draw phase, add the top card of their graveyard to their hand. So this card, you definitely want the heads coin flip to resolve. Being able just to get an additional turn for sending card resources means that you can pretty much finish off your opponent quite easily. There's no summon restriction for the world as well. So just being able to rely on this card for that pressured setup is a big part of the play in the deck. So another definite 3 of. Getting out the world is one of the easier cards to do so, and that is Arcana Force 6, The Lovers. When it's summoned, you toss a coin. Heads, this card can be treated as 2 tributes for the tribute summon of an Arcana Force monster, or tails, you cannot tribute summon Arcana Force monsters. Once again, you want to get the heads coin flip for this card, being able to summon out this card, and then go for the world, which we can also do so quite easily with some of our spells like Arcana Reading as well for that setup. But another 3 of, just so we have that tribute resource to use to get out the world, or we can even use it to get the Fiend if we wanted to also, if it's in our hand. And then another 3 of that we run for the Arcana Force monsters is 3 copies of Arcana Force 0, The Fool. It cannot be destroyed by battle. You cannot change to defense position, and if it's summoned, toss a coin. If it's heads, negate your card effects that target this card, and if you do, destroy them. And also tails, negate the opponent's card effects that target this card, and if you do, destroy them. So kind of an opposite for the Fool, being that the tails has a better option with this card, but it cannot be destroyed by battle, so one of the better defensive Arcana Force cards to sit on as well. It cannot be changed to defense, but you can still set it up in defense to have as that protection card against your opponent. And for some of the lower numbers for the Arcana Force monsters, 2 copies of Arcana Force 18, The Moon. When it's summoned, toss a coin. Heads, during your standby phase, you can special summon 1 Moon token to the field. Tails, during each of your end phases, select 1 card or monster you control and give it to your opponent for control. So this is a varying effect as well. Depending on the Arcana Force monster with the coin flip, you could swap, effects by giving the monster that had a tails result to your opponent. So depending on the monster that you give them with this card, that could have negative consequences to them as well for the tribute. But depending on the deck and what you go up against, it's mostly here for resources to then use as the moon tokens that we summon out to the field. With the last of our Arcana Force monsters being the 1 copy of Arcana Force EX, the Light Ruler. It cannot be normal summon or set. Must be special summon from your hand by sending 3 monsters you control to the graveyard. If it's special summon, toss a coin. Heads, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can target 1 card in your graveyard, add that target to your hand, having more of a recycle power, and this card being our 4,000 attack, 4,000 defense boss monster. And when tails, when a spell, trap, or monster effect that targets this card is activated, quick effect, this card loses 1,000 attack. If you do negate the activation and destroy it, having sort of like a protection, light and darkness dragon effect for that added tails coin flip, but still really no negative with this card, but just a one of, I feel, you need to be able to summon this boss monster out. And then for the rest of the main deck monsters, 2 copies of Herald of the Orange Light and 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Just some hand trap options, being able to make use of our fairy monsters in our hand with Orange Light, and also being able to use cards like the World as a discard cost to then special summon back from the graveyard as well, since once again this card has no summon restrictions. And then for the spells, 3 copies of Light Barrier. During your standby phase, toss a coin. If the result is tails, the following effects are negated until your next standby phase. When you summon an Arcana Force monster, choose which effect to apply without tossing a coin toss. If an Arcana Force monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you gain life points equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. The main play with this card is to choose the effect of your Arcana Force. You base it on the coin flip for your Light Barrier as well, but just having no restrictions with your Arcana Force cards means that you can choose what situation you want to be in with those cards as well. So a definite 3-of, so you always have that result. It's searchable with our Arcana Force, 15 the Fiend as well. So easy search power on top of that. And also 3 copies of Arcana Reading. You toss a coin and apply this effect. If Light Barrier is on your field, you can choose the effect instead. Heads, add 1 card from your deck to your hand that has a coin tossing effect, except for Arcana Reading. So you can search out any of your Arcana Force monsters thanks to this card. And tails, your opponent adds 1 card from their deck to your hand. You really don't want to go for the tails effect, so the big risk here comes from the, resolving of your heads. But still, if you have Light Barrier on the field, you get to choose the effect with this card. The big play comes down to being able to make use of the heads coin flip with Light Barrier, and you can banish this card from your graveyard immediately after this effect resolves. Normal summon 1 Arcana Force monster, this being your additional normal summon option to use with your other Arcana Force cards. And then also 3 copies of Valhalla, Hall of the Fallen. Once per turn, you can special summon 1 fairy monster from your hand. Use control of monsters to activate this effect. Once again, the world has no summon restrictions, so if you have no monsters, you can just special summon out the world to the field, and then have your normal summon still be able to resolve as well. Having the banish play from the Arcana Reading means you could do your normal summon, and then your opponent being able to use this card to immediately afterward normal summon 1 additional Arcana Force monster, giving you your 2 monsters to also use with the world. I run 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods as well to give us another setup in the graveyard for our Arcana Reading to be able to use its banish effect. And then also the 1-ofs for the spells being 1 copy of Terraforming, 1 Call by the Grave, 1 Monster Reborn, and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster for more of the back row clearing, searching out Light Barrier, special summoning resources, and stopping any of our opponent's restrictions from adding our own cards. And then for the traps, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence along with the Herald of the Orange Lights and the Ash Blossoms, another hand trap spot, just to help with freeing up some of our opponent's monster effects that may try to stop our opponents, our Arcana Force cards. And 2 copies of Call of the Haunted, once again going off of the summon list restriction for the world, to be able to summon it back if we were to send it to the graveyard off of cards like Herald of the Orange Light, or if it were to be destroyed. And then for the extract, it's a pretty generic lineup for the extract, but 1 copy of Relinquished Anima, 2 copies of Herald of Mirage Light for more of a negation of cards in the field, using 2 monsters of the same type and attribute, except for tokens, 1 copy of Barricade Board Blocker for more recycle power of Light Barrier, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, along with 1 Reprodocus as well, with the 1 copy of Lena the Light Charmer, 1 copy of Hip Hoshinengen, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and then the 1 Boral Sword Dragon, and the 1 Underworld Goddess for the rest of our Link monsters. And then for the Xyz monsters, 1 Sylvan Princess Sprite, 1 number 11 Big Eye, the 1 number 38, and the 1 Typhoon Sky Crisis for our Xyz monsters. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, if you have the setup with cards like your Foolish Burial Goods, the ideal hand, I would say, would be the Foolish Burial Goods, the World, and even the Valhalla of the Fallen. You can use these cards for an initial setup, but the big play comes down to your setup of just being able to activate your Valhalla of the Fallen, summoning out your Arcana Force 21, the World, and then from here, you have your special summon play. You can activate your Foolish Burial Sparrow Goods to then send your Arcana reading, having the Banish to immediately summon out with a normal summon, 1 Arcana Force monster from your hand, and then you still have your normal summon to go to as well. And then during your end phase, if you rolled the head off of the Arcana Force the World, you have the 2 sends of your 2 fairy monsters to gain an additional turn thanks to this card. The other play that you can rely on is if you just normal summon out Arcana Force the Lovers, you can then use the play of the, getting heads off the coin flip to have an additional normal summon. You can send off the Foolish Sparrow Goods, sending the Arcana reading, having that banish, to then use with your Arcana Force the World to use the Lovers that we summoned out, being able to use it for 2 tributes to summon out this monster as well. The big play is getting out your Arcana Force the World. You have your additional searches with cards like the Fiend, discarding this card to the graveyard can also give you additional targets to summon this card back onto the field, but searching out your Light Barrier is your big play for this card. And you have the activation of this card and being able to make use of it because it's during your standby phase, do you toss the coin? But then you have the initial effect of this card to rely on, so you have the choice to choose all of your different Arcana Force cards when you use this card. The big play is just to activate it before you, initiate any of your other Arcana Force summons. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.